The Wendigo is a creature rooted in Algonquian folklore, often associated as taboo by nature, but carries a clear warning behind it, usually associated with a symbol of greed, isolation, and transformation. It's often described as a gaunt, antlered beast with an insatiable hunger for human flesh. The Wendigo appears in stories as a once human figure consumed and twisted by the harshness of winter and desperation. We see a direct reference to this in Swan's room for the very first time when we're investigating, and we can pick up a book called Blood of the Wendigo. It seems very akin to a Stephen King novel. The illustration and the text in the front looks extremely similar. Stephen King is a huge inspiration behind Lost Records, so this isn't a surprise. This is already starting to lay the breadcrumbs of the Wendigo and the symbolism behind it. We also see this as being a film adaptation when Swan goes to the movie palace later in the game. So clearly this is more than just something in the background. It's being put there on purpose to show that it's part of the mythos of Velvet Cove. An even larger example of this is the giant water tower in the background that has antlers attached to it, creating this extremely striking figure. When I first seen this, I did think it's clearly trying to get your attention for some reason or other. The fact that we've even got the antlers on the water tower, it's echoing the Wendigo iconography. It's a haunting silhouette that looms over the town, as if the creature's influence has been here all along. There's one point where Kat tells Swan a story about a strange sighting that she had.
So, there was this one thing I wish I caught on film because no one ever believes me. Swan's gonna laugh, I bet. Back when I still went hunting with my dad, we saw this massive buck. And it stood up on its hind legs and looked right at us. Seriously, like a human. I swear.
Cool. You saw a Wendigo?
Right? Watch out. I might be a cannibal now.
Was it just a deer? Or was there something watching her, and it had been all along without her knowing? Velvet Cove is filled with a lot of talk about cryptids. Swan mentions that she's writing a story about a cryptid and teenagers in the woods, clearly from repressed memories from the abyss, but she's writing it in the form of a cryptid.
I'm working on a book, actually.
Wow. What's your audience?
Young adult. It's a horror novel about these teenagers that encounter a cryptid.
Going back to cryptids, Pam indicates that she also seen a creature in the woods.
I've seen something, you know? No idea what it was, but it was too tall and hairy to be a man.
You saw Bigfoot!
That's what I think.
But she doesn't mention anything to do with antlers or typical signs of the Wendigo, so Bigfoot could be a possibility, or even potentially Dogman that Swan has mentioned. And this is part of the folklore of Michigan. It's known to be a state for its paranormal and supernatural influence. These legends aren't just local flavour. They reflect a community shaped by mystery, haunted by what can't be explained. The Wendigo in Lost Records may not appear in the flesh, but its symbolism runs deep. Hunger, transformation, trauma, all major themes of the story echoed in the folklore of the forest. And in Velvet Cove, some monsters don't need to be seen to be real. This is something that can easily be overlooked as environmental building, things to take up space, but there is a few clues here that could point to something way more important. This little makeshift shelter is occupied by a man named Fred. It seems to be that he's homeless, and this is where he sometimes takes refuge. When we arrive here in the game with Swan and Autumn while we're looking for her keys, Fred isn't in the picture, but we do find a lot of things here that are extremely interesting. The entrance to the shelter has a board with writing on it, and it says, "It is watching us." Not someone, not they. It. There's clear scribbles of circles that seem to go on forever, different variants of circles like an infinity circle, a spiral. These are also the same type of circles that Swan and Cat both draw at various points throughout the game. And again, when you point Swan's camera towards these particular images, the camera goes fuzzy and blurry, just like every other artifact linked to the Abyss. It has a book called Sand, which is a clear reference to Dune. The back is covered in drawings and annotated by Fred himself. It says, "The Grey Gang eats the sand from the worm guts. It is in this book and in my brain." Now, this might not mean anything. It could be ramblings of a man who's unravelling, or he's not very well. Or it could be something far more terrifying. What if Fred is another victim of the Abyss? Someone who got too close, but lived to tell the tale. The Abyss doesn't let go easily. And we've seen how it takes people and claims them. But we have seen instances of people being let go. I've referenced this a few times. Gil Davidson from the 1970s. We have the newspaper article up in the Blue Spruce, and it says that he came back 20 years later. Hasn't aged a day, but he has reappeared. Now, Gil has come back and it's made the news. This is suggesting that Gil had family and people who were looking for him when he had vanished, and he's came back, so people know who he is. In the case of Fred, because we're seeing this little shelter of his and it's indicating that he's homeless, that could easily suggest that he doesn't have any family. And if Fred himself tries to tell anyone, who's going to believe him? There's a line written on Fred's tent that says, "Take me walking on the rails." It has a poetic and haunting quality to it. And even though I can't find a direct quote from anything, from any type of media, it still evokes several layered meanings that could absolutely tie into the themes of Lost Records. Take me walking implies that he wants someone to come with him, suggesting longing for companionship or just to be understood. Walking on the rails could be Fred's way of expressing a desire to leave reality or step into another state of being, or maybe going back to the Abyss. Train tracks often symbolise escape or liminal spaces, sometimes things even darker. This could be a line created directly by the writers, meant to sound like a memory or a borrowed lyric of some kind, just familiar enough to feel real, but original to the game itself. This would make it an intentional mystery, the kind that fans dig into and assign meaning to, kind of like what we're doing now. This could be a completely irrelevant detail, but I did notice that there's graffiti of a raven and it says, "Rip Brandon." This graffiti could have been here a long time ago. It might not have been done by the same person, but if this was Fred's and he's leaving this as an ode to someone that he knew, was this maybe someone else that was claimed by the Abyss? With the raven being the connection here, could this indicate that Brandon was a companion of Fred and he was also taken by the Abyss? But maybe Brandon didn't return. I've spoken about abyssal disturbances before. It's prevalent throughout the game, with instances of Swan using her camcorder and the image starts to go blurry and has this like purpley pink distortion to it. There's a very significant point in the game during the Consequences chapter in Tape 2 where Swan has been sent over to the Blue Spruce to clean up after the gig that Bloomin' Rage did the night before. After what happened to Kat, Swan is tasked with cleaning up. Now, if you use the camera on the different items, the items that are scattered all over the parking lot, you can zoom in on certain elements and this same blurry distortion will happen, but it only happens with some elements. If you zoom in on the blood that has come from Kat, you get the distortion. The same as if you zoom in to the Bloomin' Rage banner, you get the bloody distortion. But here's the really, really interesting thing. If you zoom in on the other elements, like the speakers and the equipment that was used for the instruments, the blur does not happen. So not all of the elements here are affected. My theory here is that the reason that the camera only blurs with certain things is because the banner itself was present at the cabin. The girls created it at the cabin near the abyss. The blood itself is from Kat, who is clearly being used by the abyss. She is now connected to it. The things like the amps and the various equipment, none of that was ever at the cabin, and it has been taken from Nora's garage, I'm guessing. That was never at the cabin, it was never anywhere near it. If you zoom in on Palm, it doesn't interfere with Palm, so it's not just a case of you zoom into something and the camera automatically blurs and distorts. This is deliberate. Something else you may have noticed is if you zoom in to the window of the Blue Spruce where the blinds have been closed, it also blurs there. And even though the Blue Spruce has got nothing to do with the abyss, keep in mind that 2022 adult Swan is sitting there. And if you zoom into the other windows, there is no blur. And well, we know what happens to Swan at the end. It's also no coincidence that if you run over to the side and look behind the gated area, there is a very quick shadow figure that appears and disappears. This one is more difficult to spot than the others because of the background and the foliage and stuff around it, but it's definitely there, and this one is Kat. So what does all of this mean? My take is that this is the work of Adult Swan and Kat after the game is over and what they are doing within the abyss. They have something that they want to change here, or something that they want to witness again in this moment, or from the events of the previous night where Kat got sick. Pam also says something really interesting here about what she felt during the gig.
Did you see anything strange that night? Out in the woods? Like a presence. Like, I'm not so religious, but it was almost like there was someone out there watching over you guys.
It's no coincidence that we see a shadow figure of Kat as well in this moment. The whole conversation with Pam, the bloody images on the camera, all of this is connected. I want to give a big shout out to Red Fate here on YouTube for giving me the incentive to do this video and about the subjects that we covered in this one. I'd also like to say thank you to Mina for helping me with some assets for the video and for the thumbnail. All the people here on YouTube, Reddit and Discord that have gave me all of the support for these videos. This will be the last one that I'm intending to do for this series, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming along with me in exploring these theories. I hope that you've got something out of it and that you'll come back for the next ones.